this down. First of all, it starts with this. Write this down, distributive property. Okay, the distributive property is nothing more than this. And it says that when you have a parenthesis, it says when you multiply something outside of a parenthesis, you can multiply that thing. I'd like to use the word term, but that'd probably throw people off. You can multiply that term by everything, underline that, in the parenthesis. This, children, is probably one of the top 10 big hitters in the world of math. In other words, you will use the distributive property probably more than almost any other concept or thing in math. It's on a daily basis. If you're in Algebra 1, Algebra 2, probably even geometry, all of those, you use the distributive property more than you would even care to know. Now, the words aren't going to mean a whole lot to you without the pictures that I'm going to draw. So please, don't stop right there with the words there. It's based on this fact right here. Write this out. If you have 6 times 3 plus 4. Okay, normally when we do this problem, what do? Colton, shoot. You add 3 plus 4 and you get 7, right? And then as your last step, you do what? 6 times 7, and the answer is, Colton? 42. Okay? The distributive property says this. It says that if I have that thing outside of the parenthesis, getting multiplied by the parenthesis, and this is why it's called the distributive property, you are allowed to distribute this 6 and multiply it by everything inside the parenthesis. In other words, you'll take 6 times 3 first and get 18, plus what 6 times 4 is, which is 24. And guess what 18 plus 24 is? It ends up being the same thing as if you didn't do that. Okay, now before you ask why in the world you would do that, let me go over a couple things here. This distributive property, a lot of times the book will use the word expand. If you see that word expand, you should automatically think distributive property. Okay? If you see the word expand, think distributive property. Now, take a look-see here. The reason why the distributive property is a beautiful thing is because sometimes you have things in parentheses. Sometimes you have things in parentheses that you can't add together. For example, if I have an A and a 3, I can't put those together. They're unlike quantities, or unlike terms, we call it in math. Okay? But even though I can't put them together, I can still use the distributive property and get rid of the parentheses. And how does the distributive property work? By the way, again, it's called expanding. I take the 7 times the A, and I get 7 A's. And I take the 7 times the 3, and I get 21. This is my answer when it says to expand that. And I expand using the distributive property. I've gotten rid of the parentheses, and everybody's happy. Okay? Couple other examples of that. 3 times W plus M. I can't add W plus M together. Josh, you with me here? I can't add W plus M together, but I can do what the book calls expanding. And when I do that, 3 times W is 3W, and 3 times M is 3M. That is my answer to simplifying. I can't do anything more than that with it. That's as simple as we get. Now let me give you one to try. What if I have A times 4 plus A? If I tell you to expand that, what do you suppose my answer would be? In other words, if I use the distributive property and multiply that by both of those things, what am I going to get? Bailey Lane.
A4 plus AA.
Okay, now let me give you a couple things. What you said is completely right. We just need to write it in the world of math, the way math people write it. Okay, we don't put the letters in front of numbers. A4 is the same thing as 4A. You always put the number in front. And what is A times A? Now that you were in 7th grade here, it's not A times A, it is A squared. Okay, you have this is all right, you just need to put it in what we call the acceptable wordage of algebra. How many people were thinking that, just didn't want to say that? Yeah, sure. How about this one? How about this one? A times in parentheses B minus C. And again, the book will say expand. A times in parentheses B minus C. Ava says it's probably
AB minus AC.
Thank you very much. A times B is AB minus, make sure you take that sign there, A times C is AC. Simple as could be. Could you put BA minus CA? Yes, but in math, again, we always put it alphabetically if you give them a choice, just to be consistent with everything. Everybody's good with that? Because we're not done yet. And you probably should take out a blank piece of paper. And on top, write this word.